All right. So let's
Well,
get started. So Shanae, you are the 1031 exchange queen.
I am. So thank you guys so much. This is really great to be a part of such an esteemed panel of real estate professionals. So just a little bit about me and my background. My name is Shanae Mabry, and I'm with Old Republic Exchange Company. I've been in the real estate industry for about 15 years now, and I've been handling 1031 exchanges exclusively with Old Republic Exchange for the past 8 years. And I'm a certified exchange specialist through the Federation of Exchange Accommodators. So I always like to say that although I've been doing this for about 15 years, I got a really early start, and I started when I was 5 or 6, somewhere around there. So I'm just forever going to be 21, and that's what we're going to stick to.
All right. Sounds good. It's a state of mind.
Yes.
5.5 to be exact. I think I saw your college transcripts.
All right. So, and then Walter,
Yes, good morning. Sorry.
the tax guru, right? So you're the ones that, every time I talk to someone, they say, okay, about 1031, I need to talk to my tax person. So like you are definitely important for a lot of the questions that are out there, because a lot of people are always to the tax issues are always a question.
We value what Shanae, is that how Shanae does? I mean, we, as accountant, CPA, attorney, realtor, we are not allowed to help what she does. It's just legally, I have 3 masters, I'm a professor, I get every letter in the sun. That's one of the things that I cannot provide, is what she provides. I mean, just legally, we can't touch that. That's just her. Short of it, we do everything else. So, they change it just because, and one of the biggest thing, all 1031 people is pretty good, okay? Like Shanae, they are very helpful. They're making sure all the things are identified. But unfortunately, the only thing that can, unfortunately, for 1031 to go wrong is not from their end. It's always our end, okay? IRS not call and say, hey, did First Republic did it right, okay? You never ever get a letter like that. Their thing is very black and white. It's like, they follow these rules get done. But everything else is 8 out of 10 1031 exchange that was preparing a tax return that I see, like not done by us, is wrong. Okay.
Oh. Wow.
You do not get, people, you do not get to redo your depreciation from scratch. Okay. Everything have to follow. And one of the biggest thing that people have to watch about, one of the biggest things, when to refinance. When you talk about 1031, your first question is not what property you look for. You have to talk to Ed. When are you refinancing? Okay, because if you do not do it within the right time, all of a sudden you have a boot. Okay, the basic rule is any money you take out of 1031 along the way, you're taxable. You have to pay tax. So, if not, then we just have the building bill up, 1031, talk to Ed, take all the money out, talk to Shanae, 1031 and to the next place, start depreciate again, 1031 to the next place. No, it's not as good as what people do in their own tax, okay? Things are very fair in the tax world. And I also tell my young folks that come to the firm who's either, even H&R Block, massive taxpayer period, come to us as tax assistant, okay? They don't know, they barely know the language. When they came to us, talking to us on it, for 1031 exchange, one of the first things we do is like, okay, it's not a, I actually just told a lady yesterday that 1031 is not, you have to figure out what is your boots, what do you have to pay anyway? And people do that after they do 1031. And end of the day, I'm like, yeah, you just 1031, 200K, you should just pay the tax because you have to pay boot for all this stuff and you bought a new property, and things. So boot is very important. The word boots is a legal, it's a tax term. That means things that you kind of ticking out of what you got in a boot. It started off the basic tax rules that if you bought $1 million property and loan it, people always tell me loans and stuff when they talk about tax. I go, forget the loan. I don't care how much you loan. Loan mean nothing, okay? Loan is irrelevant unless you took more money out, right? Unless you took more money out, then the loan matter. But up until this point, let's presume you don't take money out. People say, hey, I have $1 million property. I have $700 loan. So I need 1031, 300K. I go, no. You 1031, 1 million. okay, to a property that 1 million, but there's going to be, we have to figure out a loan and how to go with. So if you took some money out, like when, let's say you went from 1 to 1 million, but you went from a 700,000 loan to $800,000 loan, you took $100,000 boot, and that's taxable. And you also have to recalculate in your tax return all the, all the depreciation recapture. Like depreciation don't stop, they just extend. And also one of the things that professional can do is that when you extend the depreciation, every time you do 1031 exchange, there are fees, okay? There are things that associate. You need to start a new depreciation. It's pennies. I mean, not true, thousands of dollars, not like tens of thousands, but it's not like crazy. Like I don't look at return and go, oh, how stupid are they? They wasted $2,000, okay? I don't see other people work say that. That's not a complaint I have, but if you know better, some of the stuff, you just start off. So people, proper 1031 for we have people that own lots of real estate. We do this all the time. You see them, for each property, we have like 12 depreciation because we have to keep track of everything, all with different dates, and we have to recapture. So most of the stuff that is not it's not what TurboTax want you to do, okay? 1031 is much more complicated. Like we don't use our third-year people to do 1031, okay? You have to be pretty senior in the firm to do that because usually they don't give us. So those are the caution. It's just one of the big thing is talk to Ed, doing it. Anytime, Fatima, like a realtor, anytime that someone want to do 1031, first thing I ask them is, have you talked to a mortgage guy? What's your plan? Because that we have to time that. So that law is very loose, okay? Let me tell you, that law, we have tried to find that law. Okay, if you refinance 6 months before you sell the place, you have to pay tax, black and white. You filed 2 years and you refinance, you took a lot of money out, you still have to pay, but there are ways for us to get a waiver to say that was actually not taking out as a cash out, that was taking out as an improvement for the home. So we want to defer that part too. But it's not easy, okay? That's not automatic. We have to send a few form, and we don't recommend that unless good client, we say, okay, remember I always say, risk 0 to 10, this is like a risk 7 maneuver, okay? It's not a 0 or 2. So someone need to be a lower risk tolerance. So those are, sorry, Shay, to go for, those are everything you need to know about the tax side in quick 5 minutes, okay?
Which is the reason why somebody like myself on the lending side always goes and does the team approach, which is to get on the phone or a Zoom call, video call with Walter to strategize this so that there is no boot, that there are no disasters, because like you said, Walter, 8 out of 10 of these are a disaster. The numbers are huge. It goes to show the importance of doing a Zoom webinar that we're doing right now, because people just don't know. Even, somewhat sophisticated, investors really have no idea, because look, you can't be an expert at everything. Hence the panel discussion here. Everybody has to become a master, a ninja, I call them, at each one of their trades. You got to know what you're doing, because the consequences financially could be huge.
Huge. Yeah.
And talk to Ed, talk to Fatima, talk to Shane, talk to me before you execute everything. I have a lot of people that come to me, Walter, and even a lot of referral from realtor. Hey, and I told him what they need to know, and they go, oh, and the realtor go, they said, great, thank you for the info. They will, after they close, they would come to you. I go, no, please talk to someone. You cannot do this after you close. You have to talk to me before.
That's
after
right.
you close, it is what it is. That's it.
Yeah. It's too late.
I can only squeeze it too much. Before that, I can move all those pieces around. So Ed's absolutely correct. And Ed's one of the best in the business. I know him we are old, okay? Decade, maybe
don't remind
decade
me.
and a half, too. Yeah, though. So if Shane is 21, then we know you when you were in kindergarten, okay? We're working together that long.
Yeah, I was her babysitter.
You touched on something that's so important, and I think it's really important that clients are having an initial conversation with their tax advisors regarding their intentions, because one thing that I can say is that with Old Republic Exchange, we've never had an exchange disallowed due to an error on our part, and we have facilitated well over 200,000 exchange transactions over the years since our inception, and to not have one ever disallowed because of us really speaks to the stability and the peace of mind that you receive with Old Republic Exchange. And the other thing that you touched on is boot. And so boot is really anything that the exchanger receives that's not like kind to real property. So it can be in the form of cash, it can be in the form of credits, or, you know, if they refinance, these are all different ways that boot can occur. So I always enjoy working not just with the CPA and the lender, but also working directly with agents such as Fatima, who are very knowledgeable on, you know, what's the timeline for an exchange, because you only have 45 days to identify the property that you intend to purchase. So I think it would be great to have Fatima step in and kind of talk a little bit about what she's seeing in the market and the challenges and how you're navigating through that.
Well, right now, I was just working with a client recently, and he was anticipating doing a 1031 exchange, but the competition, you know, just trying to figure out, is it the right move? You know, does my property already yield as much profit potential, or should I make a move somewhere else, even out of state? But the competition right now is so high, it's just trying to figure out what makes the most sense. So I think, you know, identifying a property within 45 days is definitely like, everybody has to hustle. There has to be a plan. Everybody has to have their everything in place. So like they have to talk to you, like you, Sinead, the 1031 exchange expert, the mortgage guy, Ed, to talk about, okay, how we're going to do the financing, Walter, our taxes. As long as we all have everything in order, we can execute. But that's the biggest thing. I mean, for me, I have the panel, like just of the team is really the hugest thing, just so I know I can comfortably look, because I won't. If things are in order, I just don't feel comfortable doing representation that way. So I always say, okay, let's get everything in order, because the last thing you want to do is lead someone the wrong direction. But so just for people who are just not, who doesn't really know much about 1031 exchanges, can you kind of elaborate more about what that means and the timeline, like from start to like from the beginning, like what are the first steps that someone needs to do if they are thinking about 1031 exchanges?
So thank you. That's a great question. So the first thing is that 1031 exchanges just refers to the section of the tax code, it's section 1031, that says that no gain or loss is going to be recognized so long as the taxpayer is selling investment or business use property and reinvesting into other investment or business use property using the services of a qualified intermediary such as myself to hold the funds in trust for them. So 1031 exchanges apply towards the sale and purchase of investment or business use property. It does not apply to any kind of personal use property like a primary residence or a secondary home or a vacation home, unless there's an investment component to the property. Now, the exchange has to be established with the qualified intermediary prior to closing on the property being sold. It cannot be set up retroactively. And once the closing occurs on the property that they're selling, they have a very short window to identify their replacement property, which runs 45 days from the date in which they close on the property that they're selling. They then would have 180 days from closing on their sale to complete the purchase of what they identified in the first 45 days. But really the most critical component is that 45-day window, because it's a hard and fast timeline. And there's no extensions that the IRS have provided to this timeline. So if they fail to identify within that 45-day period, they're going to lose the benefit of the exchange.
Got you. So quick question. So there is a hard line. 45 days is the hard timeline. And if it goes beyond midnight on the 45th day, is that an option?
No. So it's 11:59 p.m. on their 45th day. And there's no exceptions to that rule. There's no, you know, sometimes I get calls from potential clients, I say potential, where they'll say, you know, are you a friendly accommodator? And I said, friendly, by friendly, you mean will we commit fraud? No, not one of them.
I love the wordsmithing.
Yeah.
So another question is, so if the three identified, and I'm just asking general questions that people don't, you know, who wouldn't know. So I'm just asking these questions. So if they identify 3 properties within 45 days and just one of them doesn't, they just don't pan out, what happens then?
Well, as long as they are within the 45-day identification period, they do have the ability to revoke and replace their identification notice as many times as they need to. However, day 46 of their exchange or any day thereafter, they're locked into what they've identified. So let's say they identify 3 properties within the 45-day period, and let's say it's now day 50, and the one that they were really vying for didn't pan out. But if the other 2 that were previously identified are still available, they can move forward and purchase any one of those other properties that they had identified. But let's say they, identify 3, day 50 rolls around, and the one that they were in contract on, maybe they just did their due diligence inspections and it turned out to be a money pit. The second property that they identified sold to another buyer, and the third property, the seller decided to take it off the market. Well, in each of these instances, it's still going to result in a failed exchange, and they lose the benefit of deferring the taxes, and they will then recognize gain and pay the capital gains tax.
Got you. So everybody needs a haul, but
You're
See,
on the
I have
hook.
seen some exception though. I mean, you put a very basic rule on there. I mean, I have seen them, because they're not abiding by they sold, that up to 6 months. I've even seen one that's almost 9 months after, on it. And I'm not a 1031 intermediate expert. Okay, I know the tax. Okay, you guys do all that scope. I just telling you, I've seen those that, hey, come when I check with their 1031, who's also CPA, who no longer do tax work, and they go and they call me quote. I mean, it's enough for me to do the job, but I'm not saying that I know more about it than you. I'm just like, I've seen it. That's all. That's what I'm asking the question.
Well,
Are there exceptions? Yeah.
No, but we only handle safe harbor exchanges. So what Walter's speaking to are non-safe harbor exchange transactions. So safe harbor means these are the guidelines that the IRS has set forth in the Treasury regulations that qualify for a 1031 exchange. And they essentially say, if you follow these rules, check the box here, here, and here, you're going to have a qualified or bona fide 1031 exchange. So Old Republic Exchange only handles safe harbor transactions. What Walter's speaking to is non-safe harbor. This is where they're coloring way outside the lines. And the risk and the onus is on the taxpayer, because under scrutiny of an audit, they're going to be,
Right.
they're going to,
Okay. They're pushing the envelope, and they may or may not get bitten.
right.
I have a question. So regarding title, so who or what entities are able to do 1031 exchange? Does it have to be a person, or can an LLC do it, or can a trust? I mean,
Trust.
It can be any taxpayer. So that can be individuals, it can be partnerships, corporations, trust, etc. But the one thing that's really important is that the taxpayer who initiates the exchange and who sells the relinquished property has to be the same taxpayer purchasing the replacement property. And this is really critical for a lot of exchangers and investors when they perhaps have a multi-member LLC or a partnership that sells a property. And then perhaps that entity wants to buy a residential property, and they're going to go to Ed and say, hey, we're buying a residential property in the name of our partnership. And Ed's going, not so much, because we're going to make a loan to the individuals. And so now what they want to do is sell in the name of the partnership. That closing has occurred, so the exchange is in the name of the partnership, and now they want to buy the replacement property in their individual name in order to qualify for the loan. And that doesn't work, because the individuals, although collectively make up that partnership or multi-member LLC, they are a completely different taxpayer than the entity which sold. So it's really important, as Walter alluded to early in this discussion, have that initial conversation with your lender. Talk about your plans. Know what kind of property it is that you're going to buy, and are you able to get the loan in the right entity's name or taxpayer's name based on your strategy.
And that is also true, right, Shanae? Even if it's a single owner LLC or corporation, is that the case as well?
Not if it's a single member LLC that's disregarded for tax purposes. In the eyes of the IRS, that disregarded entity is the same as the individual.
As the individual,
so if you have a married couple who reside in a community property state, they're still treated as a single member. So my husband and I can sell a property in our individual name, or maybe in the name of our trust, and perhaps we want some asset protection, so we want to buy a property in our newly formed LLC in which our trust is the sole member. That's just fine as long as that LLC is taxed as a disregarded entity for tax purposes. We're still the same taxpayer, and that will work just fine for exchange purposes.
Please consult your family law attorney before you execute that move, because you just turn separate property in California into commingled property. So be careful on that.
Which you are now involved in estate planning attorney.
Yep.
Yes.
Let me add in a few things what Shane said. On it, it's not like she said. She's absolutely correct that IRS feels single member LLC is single member LLC. It just you don't need a separate account. As far as IRS, not your liability concern, not your business attorney concern. As far as your tax concern, it doesn't matter. I have breakfast with the IRS commissioner. He literally say, it doesn't freaking matter, okay, on it. I was trying to get a detail, and he was asking a question for someone. So, from the mouth of IRS commissioner, single member LLC. She's right about some of the California rule, but IRS is stupid. You have to understand, okay? Like legally, let me give you an example. Like if you file tax separately in the state of California, on the instruction booklet, page 3 say you must equalize your income because 50% belongs to your husband, 50% you cannot pick it. But if you file that way to the IRS, they don't know what you're doing. California know, IRS don't. So when people want to file separately, we actually tell the client, say, you should actually do it the wrong way because IRS won't say anything. If you do it the right way, IRS will actually give us problems, okay? So IRS is a weird beast, okay? It's not, so that's why some of my engineer clients say, but Walter, I wrote this rule. I go, you understand when I go to audit, they are the prosecutioner, the judge, and the jury. I'm the defense attorney begging, pleading. I just have to do a case. A stupid realtor client, you probably know him, so we're not gonna name, a realtor client decided to reply his own tax return and request a tax card in an accident. We literally got on the phone with the head prosecutor in the San Francisco area going, you know what? That dude just stupid, okay? Now they hire me. What can we do? I mean, literally, that's what we said, okay? On it. I didn't say what my staff say, and you don't know who I'm talking about, so you can't tell him. But we got him, so we got the case, moved to local cause. We have someone who willing to negotiate with us. If not to go to court, like they win every case if you take the court, because they have a couple of chip in the pocket called reasonability or extravagant. They can deny everything because it's not reasonable for them. I mean, I have fought things, with them that black and white is right, but it just got to the point that, okay, do we want to spend $40K to go to tax court? Because I know I can write, but let's just pay this 10 grand and call it quit because someone pissed her off last night, okay? She's not budging. And that's how a lot of these things go. So, but single member S Corp, corporation, no, those are all different entities. Those are all only single member LLCs, only disregard entity that you don't have to, go for everything else. And you have to talk to Ed because a lot of time, even in commercial, they have to take it out of your lane. Your trust is nothing. Okay, people say I have a trust. I go, no, you don't. You have a piece of paper that sit in your attorney desk until you die. I mean, nothing. It's just a name, and that's what a living trust is. It's nothing. It's not it's a legal document that sits in your attorney's drawer and in your desk, and none of the provision can exercise until you die. Then that trust spring to existence. So just to not get people confused and say, oh, I have a trust and stuff. Some trust is irrelevant. It's just the same Social Security, EIN. There's no different. You're just putting it, just like you call it Edward Diaz. I don't know, is that your Edgar, whatever the long last name. It's like, and Ed Diaz, it's the same thing. IRS don't care. So your living trust is nothing. Ed don't even have to take it out of your name to put that in.
Another question. So can someone sell a rental property and pay off a loan on another property through a 1031 exchange?
No. So when you're exchanging, you have a requirement. When selling real property, you have to reinvest into other real property. You can't use proceeds from your sale to pay off existing mortgages on other property, or even if it's investment property or debts that you have, because that's not like kind to real property.
But Fatima, we just have to pay boot. You can absolutely do that, but you just pay boot, okay? For the difference you pay out.
Got you. Okay. I mean, so what are the typical fees? When someone says, I want to do 1031 exchange, what are they looking at? in general?
So fees will range because we're not federally regulated. You know, fees are really all over the board. I have seen some companies, which I won't name names, but they're, you know, I've had clients say, oh, I found this company online that says they'll charge $300 for a 1031 exchange. And my first question is, well, you know, have you looked into the company? And the reason why this is so important is that because we're not federally regulated, there are very small provisions on the state and local levels that govern us. And during the last housing crisis that we experienced in 2008 and 2009, our industry dropped by about 90%. And when that happened, there were a number of exchange companies going belly up and taking the exchangers' funds with them.
Oh.
So while fees are going to be important to them, they really want to look at what's the financial strength and the stability of the company that's holding my funds. So what they'll do, say that one more time, Ed. I think you're muted. I think we lost your audio.
You may have to log out and log back in, Ed. It happens sometime. And Shane, while you're doing, do you guys do any international 1031? I presume you guys are
do. So it's important.
You do?
I actually am working on one right now where the property is actually in Germany. But it's important that people also understand if the asset that is being sold is located within the US or its domestic territories, they can exchange, again, within the US and its domestic territories. Mm-hmm. They cannot sell here and reinvest outside of the US. Mm-hmm. The same applies if they are selling an asset outside of the US, they can exchange anywhere else. They just can't reinvest into the US through a 1031 exchange.
Okay, but you guys handle those, so great to know. I don't have too many folks that willing to do the international.
We handle all facets of a 1031 exchange. So that's your typical delayed exchange where you sell first, buy second. The reverse exchange where you buy first and sell second. We also handle the improvement or construction exchanges, which is where you're wanting to use some of the proceeds from your sale to make capital improvements towards the property being purchased.
So we have an international team, y'all. Okay, so Walter, Shanae, I mean, the fact that you guys do such a big range of in location is awesome. I mean, I think it's you know, you don't really find a lot of professionals out there that have that experience. So it's great.
Japan, Hong Kong, China, Singapore, France, Portuguese. Oh, and also it was really weird. I have a bunch of people. God, what's the word? In Poland, I know nobody. I have one client lived there, and then all of a sudden they introduced me to the whole cloud. I'm like, I never even been to Poland. Okay, so you know, so people around here is very international. So you know, moving money inside and out, those are a big question. And if your audience, some of these realtor, I don't know how Shane is one of the. I actually did my master in tax. One of my thesis, you know, on it was on 1031 and 121 hybrids. That's such a cool technique for someone who own a house, have like $4 or $5 million worth of gain. It's very execute. It took like 3 years to execute, okay, with the right team. But they basically are, you know, it's really for people who in Hillsborough and, you know, up in the hill, you know, folks, people who have $4 or $5 million gain in the primary resident. How do we take the time for 3 years to set it to make part of their property rental and part of it, so they take advantage of the $500,000 gain for their own, you know, their own personal self, and then 1031 a few $1 million into the new property, so they pocket the rest and let the thing go. I mean, it's very sophisticated, but I actually gave that advice probably 20, 30 times, like series. I sit down with a client, they pay me hourly to explain this, okay? About probably 2 dozen times to execution. It take too long. It's awesome if it's right, but it took too long. I mean, it's a perfect strategy, but you have to give it 3 years for it to be, you know, to not be a sham where IRS can just blow it over, that you have enough, you know, I think, you know, soft Chinese wall to making sure that, hey, we done everything right. If you're really going to dig onto it, I guess you can interpret it's wrong, but at least we follow all the right step. So that's a big thing. I don't know how much you're into. For a realtor to have folks, have a team, for folks that, oh, I have $4 million, I don't know what to do. Like I cannot pay, I don't want to pay $2 million tax. And this is a primary resident. Like that happened in Hillsborough, Woodside. A lot of my clients sitting in $5-6 million property and they cannot move. And this is the only strategy, or in my opinion, this is the #1 strategy for them to actually get to downside without paying crap load of tax. They still have to pay some tax, okay? Nobody, Walter pay 6-figure tax, and I'm a professor in this stuff, okay? So nobody don't pay tax. Anyone who don't pay tax, West and East Side, they go to jail, okay? And stuff.
Well, and just to kind of expound on that a little bit more in this concept of using what Walter is referring to as the primary residence exclusion and 1031 exchange. Whereas I had a client who had that exact scenario. They bought a property as their primary residence for about $500,000, raised their family there, lived there about 30 years, and at the time that they considered selling, it was then valued at $2 million. Well, with the primary residence exclusion of $500,000, they were still looking at $1 million of gain. So they moved out of their home and rented it for 2 years and then sold it. Well, now the last use of the property has been for investment, so it qualifies for 1031 exchange, but they also qualify as having lived in the property for 2 of the last 5 years. So they were able to sell it, pocket that $500,000 using the exclusion, and then exchange out of the balance of 1.5 million less cost of sale expenses. So this can be
they need to be referred to someone like me, okay? Those need to be defended, okay? Those are not you know, $300 a tax return, folks. Strategy, okay? Those are not it. And also for folks, and yeah, absolutely, Shane, that's where it originally come from, but you can actually turn, like for some of these people, they can rent out half their home. These older folks, they have the big home. You don't have to move out totally because they're not comfortable doing that stuff. You know, you can, so they only display, so you can actually decide that, you know what, I'm renting out half a place to my cousin who barely here, but he's paying rent, then it's a rental property. We just have to report it because IRS based on why do you think this is a rental property? We pay tax on it. We got a business license. It's a business, I mean, you can, someone decide to rent my house, don't show up, it's not my fault. Okay, it's not a thing. So it's really meant, you know, that worked perfect, same for things, you know, but a lot of times it's for the people that have 4 million, older folks don't want to leave. Those are really crazy big bang on the buck. Then you say, yeah, no one, those are the, you know, but Tima, my staff's happily to give you 10, 15 minutes if you have a client that have that to help explain. And
well, you know, I'm gonna call you guys. I mean, look, if this, I don't play. When it comes to the professionals, I need the team because I only handle real estate. You know, you handle taxes. You know, you handle 1031 exchanges. Ed only does mortgages. So, you know, we, like you said, we cannot be experts in everything. We have to be specific in our trade. But I mean, absolutely. But so that's an interesting concept. So you said if someone has a big enough house and they do claim rental income, but it has to show in their taxes for the past 2 years.
We can start it. We can start. That's why I take 3 years. Usually when realtor come to me, like Shanae actually gave a perfect example of what real life supposed to be conservative. That was the rule was meant to do, what she described. I'm describing going to risk 8 at this, hey, someone have a $4 million equity. They want downsize, but they can't. They all they think about is transferring the property tax, but they don't, you know, until you sit to them, say, hey, if you sold this $4 million to buy $2 million, you have to pay $1 million in tax, you know, in that tax bracket. That's when you say, if you have 4 or 5 years, let's start renting out a few room. Let's start going through them. Then we use that the 50% of the house as rental, 1031 into the permanent resident and rent that out for 18 months, okay? And then they pocket the cash from the 1030, from the 121, black and white. They pay for that, and black and white. They cannot move into this 1031. But with it, and there's actually no black and white in this, but for us, it's 2 tax return, so 18 months is a good guideline. So when they 1031 to, they rent it out for 2 more years. There's no black and white unless, Shane, you know something from our research, there's no black and white to say it's a reasonable time, and we spend a lot of time digging, reasonable time owning it. What's a reasonable time? We have talked to auditor. We think it's 2 tax return. So that's why 18 months. So they basically, they sold their $5 million house with $4 million gain, moved $2 million of that to 1031 into like Tracy or something they want to live. rent that out for 18 months, and they can leave it vacant, rent to cousin too if they don't want someone living into it. They just cannot live there themselves, okay, on it. That's going up to 11, okay, if you just move in, okay? I can push it to 9 or 10, but we don't want to go to 11. So they do need to like rent something else. But in a year and a half, they can move into that $2 million house that they 1031,
Right.
become the primary resident, and their $500,000 start again. And then, but they sold $2 million, they got $500,000 gain, they got $500,000 comeback. They only pay tax on 200K.
Did he freeze?
So instead of
Okay.
selling a pin capital, let's call it, and then you have 15% plus 3.8 plus California. Okay, that's 1/3 of it. So $4 million will be $1.3 million tax. If they allow 3 years, they're going to pay $300,000 tax, pocket $2 million, own the new house. That's magic. But you have to do 3 years. Like you cannot shortcut this. Okay, it's not like it's older folks say you plan to do this. You either pay 1.2 million tax today, or you pay 100,000. But if you pay 100,000, you're gonna have to jump through some hoops.
Well, that's a great
Well, and
strategy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of expound on that a little bit more, because there was a change in the primary residence exclusion that went into effect 2009, which says that if you exchange into a property that you then later convert to a primary residence,
Mhm.
the exclusion will be prorated. So even though you'd still be eligible to apply that exclusion, you can't just take the 500,000 or 250 off the top. It'll be prorated. So for the ratio of gain that corresponds to the time that you live in the property, you can apply that exclusion. And for the ratio of gain that corresponds to the time that the property was rented, you would pay tax on it.
Got you.
So it's really important that, when someone is considering this, that they have a conversation with their CPA regarding their plans.
Mhm.
Also, what's most important at the outset is their intent when they buy the new property. And the intent needs to demonstrate that it's going to be held for investment. They don't want to have it appear that it was pre-planned for them to eventually move into the
That's
property.
why we charge lots of money. Okay, that's not 1031. That's why you pay us lots of money. Okay, none of those are concerned. If you do yourself, please don't take any of my advice because it's nothing. Don't do as I say. Okay, unless you're paying me. Okay, go through.
Well, that concludes
What
the honesty
she-
section of our workshop.
What she's talking about is actually I run across. She brought up a great point. I usually don't run across that in 1031 because I presume these people are going to die, Shane. Okay, like they're leaving the $4 million home. They're 60. They're moving to Tracy. They're not selling that property. That's not my concern. On when to get a $250,000 exemption. I presume one of them is going to pass away and they have good estate attorney. There's no capital gain at that point. That's what I'm gambling on. Okay, one of them, like they're not probably not going to move from there until I'm a CIP too, so I do a lot of life planning for folks. So for folks where I presume that when they passed, when they moved to that Tracy house from 42, they probably in their late 50, mid 60, even in the 70 when they do that. So they get 10, 20 years. They need to buy big enough, but if their state's right, one of their spouse pass away, then double step up. We're in California, so there's no tax anymore. And at that point, we'll sell that for the nursing home. But these people walk away $2 million, no tax, $100,000 tax. So if they waste all that money and have to worry, that's a whole different problem, okay? Then they're frivolous, and no people get taken all the time, unfortunately, for things. But no, but when you talk about your provision, really just for Ed, Fatima, and whoever listening benefit, you're absolutely correct. I don't see those in 1031, but what happened, people don't realize with that changes is that, what we explain, if you have ever rented out your house, then you move in, you won't get half 500K. As simple as that. If you rent your house before you move in, like if you rent your house, you move out to rent for those 2 years, you get the whole $500,000. You rent a house to interpret, our interpretation of what you said, okay? To easy to explain for it is that if you rent your house, you move back in, you rent your house again, you don't get the whole 500K.
Yeah.
That's really prevent
exclusion.
Yeah, that's prevent me owning. I own multiple real estate. Most of us do. And then me just say, oh, I'm ready to sell. Let me move in there for 2 years. Change, I know exactly, I don't need to move in. I know exactly what step I need to do to make sure that's my primary resident. So I can do that. They're there to prevent us from playing with the system. So they said, hey, if you ever rent it out, then live in it, is always prorated. It just depends how much. So but if you live in it all the time, just rented it out, didn't move back, you get the whole $500,000. So she's absolutely correct. That changed in 2009. You know, I actually haven't thought about the back end of 1031. Like, good point. I just presume people are going to die, okay? And when they're that age, one of them is going to die. I don't have to worry about the tax at that point, you know, unless if they get divorced, that's a whole different billable hour service, okay? If they get divorced and stuff, that's not my concern. So, but those are great points.
By the way, before my audio went out, I wanted to circle back and ask this question on the vetting part, because you're right. There's a lot of seemingly experts at 1031 exchanges, and people don't even know how to really vet that. So how does one go in, for the consumers watching, how does a consumer go in and vet a 1031 exchange when it comes to their financial strength? Can they order or request an annual statement? How would you recommend they go about that?
Well,
Shanae?
first thing that they want to do is find out, is their qualified intermediary a member of the Federation of Exchange Accommodators? You know,
What does
that's,
that do? As
pardon?
far as what does that do for a consumer when they're a member? What is the difference between being a member and not being a member?
So when you're a member of the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, you're essentially held to a higher standard, as well as if you are a certified exchange specialist, which I currently hold that designation. And there are presently, I just checked on their website, there are 107 certified exchange specialists in the entire country.
Who's the organization?
It's this Federation of Exchange Accommodators. And so it's really important that they're using these companies, because we're going to be held to a higher standard, but also they want to, when they're doing their due diligence, they don't just want to go fee shopping. What they really want to investigate when they're calling these different exchange accommodators is ask, what's the financial strength of your company? What protections and safeguards do you have in place for my funds? I've had clients that were, you know, they just said, oh, I just care about price. I only care about the price of the service. And I said, okay. He said, well, I found this company. They're going to charge me $500 to handle the exchange. It's a $10 million property that they were selling. I said, well, I can tell you, I've not found that $500 is in range for the type of service that we provide across our industry. Have you asked the company what their financial strength and protections are? And they said, yes, they have a $2 million bond. And I said, you have a $10 million property, and this company has a $2 million bond. You're losing $8 million if something were to happen. Plus, this company also places all of the proceeds in one bank account, which also means that if the bank fails, your maximum coverage on your $10 million investment is $250,000.
Yep, FDIC, yeah.
So they really want to make sure that they're asking those questions.
Well, if that happened, I don't think, you know, it's First American. If all the bank collapse that we need FDIC for the $250,000, I'm moving to Singapore. Okay, so the world, it's not, you know, nobody's left. Okay, if we go that far into the, if I do have most of my money in many different, my cash money, different account for $500,000, but I always tell my wife, if we really need that protection, we are moving out America. Okay, thank God we got gold coins. Okay, on things. It's like, yeah, it's, but anyway, sorry, just
No, that's great.
financial.
Well, and one of the things I wanted to ask Ed is, what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing on the lending side, especially due to COVID?
Well, there's a lot has changed. I mean, look, the planet went over a cliff, right? Who knew that so much would happen? And typically, as you guys know, I mean, look, even though it was in 2008, it's still fresh in the mind of lenders that happened. And so anytime you see something else come up, such as this pandemic or any other thing that may come up economically, it forces lenders to retract. It forces them to eliminate programs. It forces them to constrict liquidity. Sometimes what they do is that they raise rates very, very high in a super low rate environment to basically give out the message, we're not in lending, but if you insist on us doing your loan, it's going to cost you this much more, right? And that's just to pump the brakes, particularly on the jumbo market side where the loan amounts are greater and they're not insured. You know, these lenders are retracting when it comes to allowing what they used to allow, such as some of them may not anymore allow for you to give a loan to an actual corporation or to a trust. They want the actual person to be on the loan. So those are some of the things. The other part is they may not allow certain programs, such as, maybe um, interest-only loans, right? Those kind of things start to get taken away as the perceived risk is heightened, particularly now. We're starting to see more and more the jumbo lenders starting to let go of that death grip that happened a couple of months ago, where some lenders weren't even lending anymore, and some of them still don't, by the way, that were doing the jumbo loans. But we're starting to see a relaxing now. They're starting to come out of from hiding in their caves and starting to relax the guidelines, allowing lower credit scores, for example, allowing higher loan to values, and also allowing higher debt to income ratios. But it's still somewhat constricted, even now. So don't be surprised. And this is the value also that I see in being able to talk to multiple banks to see what is their wheelhouse, what's their strength, and what isn't. Because some entities pretend that they are experts at everything. By the very nature of how I just stated this sentence, nobody is an expert at everything. Let me just dispel that myth. Nobody. We have some super high horsepower upstairs in what I call the cerebral penthouse. We have some really great people here. Yet, notice how we all defer to one another in our areas of expertise. So be very careful, number one, with a lender that pretends or purports to be an expert at everything, because that I, in my 21 years, have not seen that, which is one of the reasons why I'm a broker, is because I am allowed to go into that sphere and become your professional shopper. With my 21 years of eyes, I know what questions to ask. That's the other thing too, you need to ask a lot of questions. Number two, be assertive. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Remember, this is your money. This is your loan. Don't also be afraid to vet and to ask for referrals and references, particularly when it comes to, getting a loan, to make sure that that person really understands this transaction. And they should be asking you questions like, for example, which I always ask is, how long do you think you're going to keep this property? Tell me what the goal of the property is. Because what happens if they're doing a 1031 exchange, but they maybe plan on doing a flip, right? Or they have a bigger master plan. Well, then we better get back to the drawing board and let's go talk with Walter and Fatima and with you, Shanae, and say, okay, well, this has a part two to it that wasn't readily apparent at the onset in the initial discovery conversation. So yeah, there's a lot of change. Keep in mind, we're in a great interest rate environment. If you're going to be doing these just in general, this is a great time to do it. Prices, unlike what people thought, we're not seeing a retraction in prices. In the condo side, we are seeing maybe about a 10 to 15 around there on average drop in rate, drop in prices, because people don't want to shelter in place in such small locations, and plus the infrastructure. The reasons why they were buying it is no longer the restaurants, the deli, the coffee houses. We all know that has been severely affected negatively by the economic impact of COVID-19. But prices in general, I mean, we're seeing, Fatima just had a deal in Orinda where the property went for $250,000 over.
It did.
So
Over market. So
yeah, over market. So these things are still happening. So don't wait for values to continue to go up and for the chance, even though I'll tell you my opinion, I don't see interest rates going up significantly until maybe 2022. And I think Chairman Powell talking tomorrow is going to absolutely confirm that. There's no way that he's going to allow for this housing market to crash, because it's one of the great indicators of economic strength is real estate. People have to live somewhere. Okay. Aside from what we're talking about, which is investing, right? People need to live somewhere. And so housing will always be necessary. What's that?
Even if Biden come and then as our Congress California turning a little bit more socialist, you think that they're going to keep the rate down?
I do, because
2022?
Yeah, I do, because if, let's just say they didn't, then this collapses. This collapses. It's one of those things. It's not like saying, look, I'm going to allow for the price of soybeans and milk to go up. That's different than housing, which is so necessary. I don't have to drink milk. I can drink, oat milk. I can drink water, right? But housing is such, I'm going to say, one of the most critical parts of any economy, not just the United States. And the impacts of this virus, we're going to feel them for many years to come. This isn't a flip the switch and overnight we're going to start to see, super healthy. It's going to take a while. When you look at, for example, San Francisco, where I live, where 56% of all restaurants are going to close forever. In a city, by the way, that's one of the major tourist cities in the world, not just the United States. That's a big sign. We've had over 5,000 small companies go out of business since May in the immediate Bay Area and counting. There's just no way.
Right. So
that
even
all
with
of
the
a sudden rates
interest,
are going to go to 6% and liquidity dies. There's
right,
no way.
even if it's goes lower though, as I see, like my pulse on the commercial side, because
Yeah.
we shut down few office, we expanded, we go through and stuff like that. I saw the company we sold to someone else, they just
Yeah.
renege on their lease. I mean, in San Mateo, when I was looking at the beginning of the year, we're looking to expand. There was only 30 plays for rent, one per cell. Now there's 60. San Jose, which is gone some. San Jose's hundreds and hundreds people giving away 6-month free rent. Down there. I mean, things are dollar square foot. San Mateo have not moved. Okay, San Francisco, San Mateo, they still charging
Yeah.
covert, commercial space. I think they're nuts. Okay, but I see, company like mine, my client, everyone is, moving away, and I see San Jose crack very hard already. They're giving out 6 months, 3, like all the ad. If you go to Loopland for rent, you click on each one.
And you're right, Walter. But can you imagine now all of a sudden we go into a 5 or 6% interest rate environment added to
Right.
what you
Then
just
we're gonna
said?
screw
Are
everything.
you kidding me? That's called a depression, right? So, and here's the other thing, guys, that we got to really look at. In September, we're going to start to see the forbearances go away. What's going to happen when this starts to happen? What happens when unemployment and all these support systems that are there go away?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, me
That's going to be a big
personally,
change.
unfortunately, this quarter just me here. I think this currently, I totally agree with a professor friend of mine that this is the biggest wealth transfer that's happening in our lifetime.
Oh, for a fact. Yeah.
From the lower class to the upper. This is one of my best year ever. Okay, not because I feel so bad. I keep saying I am so blessed. I'm so sorry for these people, but that's not happening with me. Everybody, all the people that have. This is a brilliant year. I mean, oh my God, I'm laughing to the bank. But he's right. This is one of the greatest wealth transfer that's happening. So what's politically is going to happen to snap this rubber band back? It's like, this is what the lower class being afraid of the whole time, and it's happening right now. All of us who own stuff, all of us, government's giving us money, stuff. I mean, I have 180% return on my trading portfolio. I do have a bunch of gold coin. I wasn't joking. I buy some every year. They all double in price. From last year. I mean, some of them I bought at $500 a coin.
No, and to your point, Walter, look, we're getting a little bit away from the 1031.
Sorry.
But it is about
You're super interesting.
But you're right, Walter. Look, we've seen we in the United States, let's make this very clear, do not have a wealth problem. We have a distribution of wealth problem. We are the richest country in the world, on the planet, right? So we have a distribution, which has caused a greater chasm between the haves and have-nots. That's getting wider and wider. We all know that. And the death of the middle class, which makes these kind of workshops, to reel it back in, more important, because we're here to show you, the person watching, the opportunities for you to get a little piece of this. Start small, make sure your team is robust, start small, listen to the pros, and you too shall participate. Now, not everybody can participate, just because, and I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you this unequivocally. Homeownership is not for 100% of the population, like they tried to make it sound like before 2008, hence the collapse, right? You cannot lie and fake it to make it your way into this kind of wealth. You just can't. But you can start small. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do it by yourself, start to aggregate those others who also have the same dream that you have, aggregate them and do it in aggregate. Maybe it doesn't look like what I'm saying is the way you designed it or thought about it initially. Sometimes you have to two-step it. You know, in baseball, we talk about, well, if you can't hit a home run, at least get to first base. Get the first base. Get your team in place. Get the first base. Listen to what they have to say. Let them advise you. Do it the right way, not always your way, because the experts know. And then you'll be able to participate, because otherwise, let me tell you something. If you don't make the sacrifices to invest in your life and in your future, others will. And it doesn't involve you. The chasm is going to get bigger and bigger, regardless of politics. I'm telling you, it's just the new world order. It's the way it is. Not everybody knows how to program and create apps. That's why they get paid the big money at 22 years of age. You have to stop talking about how when you were a kid, you didn't have the opportunity at 21. You're right. But you talking about is not going to change that. We've shifted gears into a new economy. This is an economy of technology. This is an economy of aggregating everything, including talent, which now we're learning. COVID forced us to learn that, you know what? You don't need an office. You can hire somebody in Portugal who has the brain trust of what you need as talent. There are no borders. That's an illusion. So get informed, get your team together, and then take action. And sometimes you got to involve other people as well. I will tell you, collaboration will be the theme moving forward. You have to learn to collaborate with other people, because your dollar plus their dollar plus somebody else's dollar in aggregate pushes the needle. But your dollar by itself will not.
I have a lot of realtors client, you know, and I'm seeing 7 to 8 years ago when they talk about team, is one good guy hire a bunch of junior and try to make money off them. Now I'm seeing realtor team, they're a true team and they are making money, like two good, like both my good client, I know how much they make. No one lied to me because I see their tax return. I know how much they make, and they join force. It's actually teams. I mean, that concept, I'm seeing more that there's more, like to your point, there's more team now, not so much as they called team before. It's me and let me hire a bunch of junior and they can do an open house for me and I take 50% of the lead, okay? That was a team 7, 8 years ago. Not today as in the realtor world. And to one last point, let's go from you though. Lots of people come to me. A lot of people that you describe need to do that, but they are call themselves hustle. I call them hustler. I'm like, you're still too much of a hustler to be my client, okay? You need to calm down a little bit. I can help you with any of the idea, but you cannot have 9 ideas. And they're looking for the shortcut to win because they always reach that core that thinking that, ooh, I need residual income. You know what? The millions I have is making me residual income, not because they are in anything. You know, my money's sitting in even Occidental oil stocks making me money, you know, on it. That's what making money, not the rich and poor. You're right.
You know what? You're right, Walter. People are, and I think technology has been a big culprit in that, making people get ADHD. You know, they can't focus. You know, I will tell you, my 3 focus points, my call it my triangle of success, has never been debunked. You got to be prepared, you got to be patient, and you got to be persistent. That's it. But you can't be all over the place. I call it the sparkler brain. You guys remember, you know, you light a sparkler and it's going all over the place. You got to be focused. Focus, be persistent, be prepared. Because the more prepared and focused and persistent you are, the rest of the people think you're lucky. It's not luck.
That's what I say. See, I like you so much, Abby, because you think like me. And I'm like, yep, I'm agreeing to everything you say. I'm like, yep, you're smart.
And by the way,
like,
if Walter's telling you to calm down, that says a lot.
Well, great. Well, how can people get in contact with each of you if they want to learn more, talk about the real estate market or taxes or getting their financing in place? How can someone reach you?
Walter, go first. How do they reach
Ed, you? Talk to Fatima, talk to Shane. If they think you can bring us in, I'm happy to help. You know.
And how can people get a hold of you right away if they have questions?
Call Leon. Don't call me, please. Call Leon.
Which Leon's
one of my staff member. He's on here. Call Leon.
Leon, how do they get a hold of you? Unmute yourself.
Ed, call me. You know, only you, Fatima, on my cell phone. You have my cell phone. You know, you guys.
You'll be referred if you're calling us anyway. But if they want to talk to just you, how do they get a hold of you, Leon?
You can visit our website, dragontax.com, or you can call our office number 650-345-2604. I'll be sending this to Shanae as well as a follow-up. Or you can email me directly, Leon@dragontax.com, and I'll be sure to relay your needs or your client's needs to Walter.
But me
Perfect.
personally, Ed, Fatima, you know, you guys got the bad line. You can call me on my
Oh
cell.
yeah.
I pick up
No,
all the
absolutely. By the way, just a quick little endorsement. They do my corporate and they do my personal taxes. So and I know tons of people, as everybody on this panel knows, I know a lot of people when I pick them and they've been fantastic. They really have. I know Walter talks really fast sometimes and you got to like put it in slow-mo to actually capture 80% of what he says, but he is extremely knowledgeable and a one-on-one is just, it will make a huge difference. Fatima, how do they get a hold of you?
My number, I've had my number for almost 20 years or probably more. So my telephone number is 415-756-4418. Call, text, whatever floats your boat.
Shanae, is that the number to reach you at, or is there a cell phone number?
That's my number. It's
All right.
888-677-1031. You can also
nice.
connect with me on LinkedIn, Shanae Mabry.
I love the 1031 at the end. You can't have it. And if you need to get a hold of me, my best way to do it is just send me a text. Ed, I want to talk with you. Always please reference who referred you because that's super important. I'm a huge on relationships and I'm in the long game, but you can reach me at 415-368-1149. Thank you,
Besides,
everybody.
let me add something for Ed. Besides him being a good mortgage guy, he does know everybody. So sometime I'm at a loss. I just don't know who to call. I'm like, Ed, give me, point me in direction. Who do you know that I can talk to about this? Ed's one of those 5 that I would call that I'm like, I have no idea what expertise I need. Let me call Ed. He probably knows someone who knows someone. So he's just a good guy to know. That's why when Fatima and him ask me for this stuff, I don't do this much now. But I'm happy to
Well, we
help
poured our
them.
heart in everything we do. We really do care. It's not about the money.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you so much, Janae, for moderating here and for all your wonderful information. We're going to be doing more of this stuff, folks. So please let us know maybe some topics that you would love for us to cover, and we will make sure to do that. So thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank
Keep
you,
doing
everyone.
the great
Bye-bye.
work you're doing.
Yeah.
Be well.
And Ed, anytime you can come by to my house, I got lots of bourbon, and we can sit and talk about, macro philosophy. Okay, I mean we're getting into pretty macro there. So
I'll even grow my beard longer for you. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Be well.
Take care.